Directly to my right, we have Dr. Finley Campbell, who's been active in social justice and activism since 1969. He's currently the programs coordinator for the Chicago chapter of the Unitarian Universalist Christian Fellowship and the chair of the Racial Justice Task Force of the Social Justice Council at the First Unitarian Church in Hyde Park. He's also a senior professor emeritus at DeVry University, Chicago campus. Right next to him, we have Ms. Jordan Hestermann. Jordan is the founder of Becoming We the People, an organization geared towards working towards ending poverty as a means of achieving equality. She's currently working on her MBA and researching the structure of the U.S. government's budget and its relation to military spending. Next to Jordan, we have Dr. Melvin Rothenberg. Dr. Rothenberg is an emeritus professor of mathematics at the University of Chicago, and a long-time peace and justice activist. He's been active with the Committee of New Priorities in Chicago Jobs for Justice over the last decade. He's also a founding member of the Chicago Political Economy Group. He's currently involved in the national Move the Money campaign, which seeks to redirect government funding away from wars towards more social issues. The format for tonight's discussion can be pretty simple. We only have 4 questions we're going to ask the panelists, and they're each going to take turns answering the questions. Panelist discussion is encouraged. However, if you're a member of the audience, we ask you to hold questions, and there will be a question and answer period at the end. You can address the panelists. So with that said, I'd like to get started. Our first question is going to be, we're going to start with Dr. Campbell. Speaking from your research and experience, what is your understanding of military spending?
Well, I grew up in the beginning of the Cold War. I remember very well how in 45, both in VE Day, which was victory in Europe, and VJ Day, which was victory in Japan, how excited we were that period of the need for war and war machinery be over. I was a great committed to the American allied United Nations fight with the Soviet Union and China and France, United States. And I loved military weaponry, particularly the airplanes. But we thought it was pretty much over, and during the period 45 to about 50, it seemed that that was it. And then in 1950, the war broke out again, the Korean War. And like many people, I was committed to defending the poor, defenseless folks in South Korea from the evil, barbaric North Koreans. Later I discovered that it was not what we fought. And during that period of time, from 45 to 50, that a military propaganda was unleashed, mainly led by the Air Force, to make American defense strategically acceptable by vast expenditures of money during so-called peacetime. I remember as a U.S. Air Force aficionado that when they made the U.S., it used to be the USAAF, Army Air Force, it made it to its own division of the military. I thought it was really great. They had such beautiful airplanes, the B-45, the B-46, the B-52, the B-50. Little did I know that these airplanes that I saw with such beauty and power and strength were in fact the beginning of the investment of great sums of money into the American war machine. In fact, the name of the Department of, it used to be called the Department of War when I was a young person, and they eventually called it the Department of Defense. I remember a series of films coming out, Strategic Air Command, Gathering of Eagles, about the B-36, the B-52, James Stewart, and this one and that one, all these movie stars. And I'm really being called a Rock Hudson, you know, and I feel being ready. And something called SAC, Strategic Air Command. And it was like a kind of programming of film, of definitely a war going on in Korea, and of a whole structuring of our society that I, as a teenager, didn't quite understand why it was only a 5-year break between World War II and talks of World War III. I remember reading a magazine in Colliers called World War III, and it showed how the Russians would attack us and how we have to defend ourselves, depending primarily on the Air Force, and it showed Russian soldiers coming down the streets of New York and Detroit, something like that. And so the source of this imagery that I experienced as a culture was in fact programming me and others much older than I was to believe that only by something called military preparedness, universal military training. Truman pushed that forward, that we needed to defend ourselves from the red barbarians that had already swallowed up Czechoslovakia in 48, had created a Berlin airlift, and there was a whole ideological propaganda to make us believe that only at best a preventive war, that is attacking Russia first, or minimally defensive war, we would prepare to defend ourselves from a Russian attack, that we would be safe. So the roots of Eisenhower in 1957, 8, whenever it is, he made his speech. I got to remind you one blank. But whenever he made his farewell speech about the military-industrial complex, I was there at its beginning. Even though I was a kid, I think it was the greatest thing possible to see those F-86 Sabre jets zooming over Selfridge Field in Detroit, doing that so-called air shows. And so that was, to me, one of the sources of the beginning of the military-industrial complex, the idea of protecting the country from Russian